Welcome to episode 48 of the Power and Light podcast. My name is Josiah Winnell. Today I'm joined by the full crew. Jude Miley, how are you doing today on this wonderful Saturday?
I'm doing brilliantly. I'm excited to record with you, Josiah.
I'm excited as well. I'm also excited to record with Preston Graber. Preston, how are you doing today on this fine morning?
Doing really good. Good weather. Happy to see it.
Hey, we're excited to be all back together, and every time we can record together, it is so much fun. Today, we have a special little bit of debate, maybe, in the sense of we're very excited to talk about something that should be on the minds of many college football fans right now. So obviously, the college football rankings coming out recently, and the projected bracket almost set in stone, just a few more things that could change, but likely set in stone for right now. But the debate that is going on right now, especially after a massive performance, a 200-plus yard performance from Ashton Jeanty last night, is who is the Heisman winner this year. This episode is being recorded on December 7th. The Heisman voters have to submit their ballot by December 9th. And there's a couple things we'll dive into, but that means right now that their decision has to be made after, of course, both guys that are at the top of the list right now, Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, have completed their seasons. The question is, if Ashton Jeanty went on to make some noise in the college football playoff, it doesn't matter right now because those ballots have to be cast December 9th. We're only a week away from the official announcement of who the Heisman winner is. So, Jude Miley, Preston Graber, we're going to say the top two are probably Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. There's a couple other quarterbacks that are in this run, and it's strange not to have a quarterback at the top of the list. But Preston, I want to start with you. What has Travis Hunter done this year to earn himself the best odds going into this final weekend of contention for this very prestigious award?
Well, I think it all is based on the fact that he plays both sides of the ball. If he didn't play defense, then I don't think we'd be questioning it. It would be Jeanty, but the fact that he plays a top 10 cornerback and top 10 receiver in college football in this day and age is just something you don't see. I don't know the last time we had someone play both sides of the ball at that high of a level even. So I think that that's what gives him the biggest edge, and the fact that he still has been productive as a receiver.
Jude, we'll do official predictions at the end, but I'm under the impression that you think that maybe Hunter is the maybe obvious, but definitely your pick for Heisman. Can you explain why that is the pick for you this year?
It's kind of the same with what Preston said. He impacts two parts of the game, and it's not been seen. Like, the way he does it, it's incredible. And his impact lasts beyond the game, and you have to think of how difficult that would be to be on the field so much and not having as much of a break, and yet he still can perform as a nationally talented, better than almost everybody else in both sides of the ball.
Yeah, he's definitely, like Preston said, top 10 in many categories. A top 10 wide receiver, top 10 cornerback. I would not argue with that at all. But the question right now that we're looking at is, what is the definition of a Heisman? I would say it's the MVP of college football. And so who is the most valuable? Well, looking at what he brings to his team, if you could play both sides of the ball, that makes you extremely valuable. And that's probably the reason, as Preston and Jude mentioned, that is the reason why he is the favorite right now, and a significant favorite. But the question right now is, you have to look at what Ashton Jeanty's doing. Preston, you just broke down what Travis Hunter's doing. Jeanty just ran for over 200 yards in the Mountain West Championship against UNLV, against a solid UNLV team. He's just making grown men look like boys right now, especially on that defense. He runs like he's covered in butter. What about Ashton Jeanty makes him so special?
Well, I think it's the fact that, one, he's small. It's not like he's a huge back or anything. He's undersized for the most part, and yet he still breaks tackles. He's still super strong, and he breaks away when people aren't really expecting it. He makes plays when there really is nothing. He could have been hit behind the line of scrimmage and he'll still get positive yards. And also the fact that he gets the ball 30 times a game, that's a big help to the 2,400 yards that he had this year.
Dude, looking at Ashton Genty, he had a hard decision to make, and this is all about coverage in the sense of you want to go to the school that will give you the best shot to play at the next level, right? That's the intention of for many in college football. Ashton Genty had the opportunity to go to a Power 4 school this year, but decided to stay in the Mountain West and play at Boise State. And the difficult part of that decision is whether or not he would get coverage. In the sense of looking at what Travis Hunter does, Travis Hunter is not only at a Power 4 school dominating in a lot of different facets of the game, but he also has one of the biggest media stars as his father and coach. Who do you think was the better covered person in the sense of most media coverage this year, and how much of an impact do you think that has on this Heisman race?
Okay, that is, it seems kind of hard to answer, but honestly, I heard about Ashton Genty way more just in, I guess, everyday talk. Now, Travis Hunter may have a lot of reasons you think, oh yeah, he's in all this stuff. He goes to Power 4 school. He plays for Deion Sanders. But Ashton Genty was just hyped up so much just because he was just likable, I guess. I don't know. And I think because of that, a lot of people talk about him a bunch. But I'm not sure people, that doesn't really transfer into people taking him as seriously as maybe you would want to if he wants to, earn accolades for the Heisman. Whereas Travis Hunter, when people talk about him, they talk about him because he's the boss, not because he's just, super swaggy and cool and doing stuff.
Boss,
right?
Okay. I mean, that's a good point. Here's what I'll say, and I'll just go out just straight and tell you right now, I think Ashton Genty should win the Heisman, and here's why. I think Jude mentioned it, and it was kind of a pointed question, so I apologize. But I feel like the fact that Ashton Genty is getting this amount of media coverage at a non-Power 4 school shows how good he is, but also shows how he got his name out there, and that's really, really special. But looking at what he's done this year, the argument against him is definitely, well, what about the competition? What about who is he playing against? These yards are coming against non-Power 4 schools in most of his games. But looking at what Boise State has done this year, look at where they are in the college football rankings. Right now, they are more than likely after their conference win, they are anything but a sure, or they're everything but a sure lock to get that bye week in the first 12-team playoff in the college football playoff. That is incredible for a non-Power 4 school. And he is the main reason, right? That's a good team. It's not just him, but that's a good team. And going back even further in the season, yes, a lot of Mountain West opponents that had some close games, but their only loss came against Oregon, the number 1 team in the country right now. It was on a game-winning field goal. Most people don't realize that because it was so early in the season, but Boise State has played so well this year, and I know it's not just Genty, but he is the leader of that team. He is the catalyst of that team, and they're doing incredible things. Preston, looking at the team as a whole, what do you think the ceiling is for this Boise State team, and how much of an impact, or I guess how much credit should Ashton Genty be taking from that?
Well, I mean, personally, I think the ceiling's where they're at. Unless something crazy flips in the CFP, I think they're probably going to lose round 1. But I mean, yeah, look where they've gotten. They've gotten to, well, I guess they won't lose round 1, sorry. The first game they play, I think they'll probably lose. But yeah, Genty's getting them here. He's carried the ball 344 times, which is just absurd. No one gets that many touches in college football unless you're carrying the team on your back. So that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, against Oregon, they handed him the ball 25 times and he averaged 7.7 yards per carry. I could see them upsetting a team, but realistically, they don't have the firepower on offense. So Genty is literally carrying the entire.
It's just one of those things that, yeah, you look at the rankings, you look at the projected bracket, and it's going to be difficult. But right now, even though SMU is now a Power 4 school, they're in their first opportunity. So we're seeing 2 teams that we would have probably never seen in a college football playoff when it was in its 4-team format in SMU and Boise State, getting those buys. But right now, as it's set up, Penn State will play Arizona State, the 5-12 matchup, and the winner of that game would play Boise State. So in the event of a Penn State win, which would be the likely, or I guess would be the most likely route just based on seeding, that would be a 4-5 matchup, and that would be a very difficult matchup for Ashton Jeanty and that Boise State team for sure. Like, it just doesn't make sense for Ashton Jeanty, even though they're the 4 seed, to be the favorite over over a Big Ten school that has had so much success this year in a lot of different areas. But looking at one other thing, Jude, looking at what we just saw with Ashton Jeanty, Travis Hunter isn't in the playoffs, and he won't be, but he still had a successful season. We're not looking at these two teams, right? We're looking at the players. What's the argument for Travis Hunter, even though he isn't in this extracurriculars in these college football playoff rankings? And he likely, unless some crazy stuff happens, which will not, Colorado ending up in the CFP.
Yeah, and your argument, it really pulls on me because I see Boise State and Ashton Jeanty with this just incredible stats, and pointing out Oregon was their only loss. I mean, that's the only reason you can say, well, maybe Boise State is truly as good as they seem, because that loss was to the number 1 team. But Travis Hunter, like, what makes me lean toward him is just the ability, like the talent he has to have to play offense and defense, and to play that well. Like, if he was just a wide receiver, think about how much more energy he could put into being a wide receiver. Or if he was just on the defense, how much more energy he could put into the defense. But he puts his energy into both. That just seems like it takes so much talent, so much. He just seems like a really raw player. And there's no way you can't, like, honor that. Like, who else has done that? And who else has had as much success as him? Like, how can you not say, oh yeah, that's the Heisman?
I think we could wrap up this argument and say, here's the deal. Travis Hunter is the obvious favorite, and it's because of his defensive prowess. I think offensively he is a great player, but he is not a Heisman contender if he is only an offensive wide receiver. And as Preston said, that's the reason why he is in contention. That's why he's the favorite, because all-purpose yards, between what he can do offensively and defensively, his value, as I mentioned, is unparalleled. And that is the reason why he's the favorite right now. But I just am saying, don't sleep on Ashton Jeanty. And the final thing I'll say on this is Jeanty was interviewed mid-season about who should be the Heisman winner between the two of him and obviously Travis Hunter. And he said, look, please understand, I think this was with a student interview. Look, you have to realize what Travis Hunter is doing right now is special. He's one of the best players in the country. But then Ashton Jeanty said, what I'm doing right now, nobody's ever done before. And what you got to realize when you're hearing that is he's confident that he is the best. And he is confident that he will go out and do something that you've never seen before. So if you haven't watched much Boise State football, I haven't watched much Boise State football. I've watched probably 5 games this year, which is probably more than the average college football fan. And so I ask those who have a vote and those who have an opinion in this, watch some of his games, because you see Travis Hunter, you see him in all of his Colorado Big 12 games, and you see the highlights from both of these guys. But when you just watch the game, it's kind of like watching LeBron James or Stephen Curry. If you just watch the game fully without watching the highlights, you see how good they actually are. And it's just not clipped, and then you see their mistakes and the way they're able to limit those. So the final thing I'll say and question that I have is Heisman winners get a vote. So every Heisman winner before has a vote in this. Preston, how much do you think this is going to shift the conversation, especially with all these Heisman winners that have connections to Deion Sanders?
Well, I mean, I don't think it will shift it much because Hunter's such a big favorite, and I think he's gonna win it. I mean, he's done enough to win it, so listen, this man's only been targeted 34 times while he's been in coverage. There's only 2 college football players that's been targeted that amount of times, and he's one of them. Like, he's a top 5 corner. He's a top 10 receiver based on talent-wise. They just have a ton of other receivers. So they're gonna vote for him. I don't see a way in which they see such a versatile player and they just don't vote for him.
And Jude, unless there's a team that in the NFL that gets that first overall pick and just desperately needs a quarterback, if he wins the Heisman, Travis Hunter that is he a lock for first overall in this next year's NFL draft?
And I mean, it all, I guess, depends on who's getting it. But if the Raiders are drafted in first overall, I mean, why not take them, right? Travis Hunter is so much more talented than, well, I wouldn't say so much more talented, but he's got so much more potential to make an impact than I feel like Ashton Genty. Although you never know, but I just think he's really good, so I would take him.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Jude, and running backs in the NFL should be a sign of what value is truly in the NFL, and I don't think anybody's going to argue that the ceiling is higher for Hunter in the NFL than it is for Genty. And for Chiefs fans, be excited because it sounds like Ashton Genty, even though he doesn't really get a choice, would love to play for either the Cowboys or the Chiefs. But my question is to Preston, looking at these teams, looking at these options, do you think, and based on what you've seen from Travis Hunter this year, do you think he could play both ways in the NFL, both durability-wise and talent-wise?
I think he definitely could. I just think he would be an average receiver, though. I would see him being like a Jacoby Myers type guy, but like he just gets so many screens at Colorado, but his hands are incredible. So if they use him right, then sure. But I do think he could be a top 5 cornerback in the NFL if he were to go right now and just play cornerback.
Well, there you go. That is the debate in front of us right now. And as we look at it, it's, I feel like, closer than what the odds say, but the odds right now say -2,500, that 2,500 mark for Travis Hunter, making him the obvious favorite, but plus 1,000 Genty on the outside looking in. A great last performance for him last night against UNLV. The final thing I want to talk about today is these college football rankings. So if you haven't heard, the December 3rd rankings from the selection committee put Oregon at 1, and then after that it's the Texas Longhorns, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia rounding out the top 5. Ohio State drops to 6 after their loss, bringing Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, and Boise State in that order. The surprise, I would say, for many is Alabama at 11. Then it goes Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Arizona State. So the question that we have to look at right now, is this selection the right way? I guess is the right system. Preston, looking at this, I just named multiple teams. So the selection committee, they just rank their teams. That's all they do. But then the way it works is the top 4 conference winners get into those 4 bye weeks, the top 4 ranked by teams from each conference. But then we are looking at Arizona State in a 12-team playoff format being the 15th seed, getting in over that Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina team. What do you think the situation is right there? And is it just because the Big 12 doesn't have another team that was the reason that Arizona State would get that 12-team nod?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that is meant for a conference winner, the 12th seed. And so that could have been from the American Conference or the Big 12. So Tulane was in contention for that until they lost their game last week and then their bowl game this week. But I think that's where that stands. And so whoever wins the Big 12 championship today is in. But I do not like that very much. I would like to see, Miami have a shot at it. I think Bama's just rigged at getting in at 11. You know, there's a lot of movement I would do right now, but we'll wait to see. A lot will shift today with bowl games. Penn State will probably drop a little bit if they lose to Oregon or vice versa. You know, there's a lot that could happen.
There's a lot that could shift inside that 12. But my question right now, Jude, kind of looking at all of this, is there much shifting of actual team changes? So the only major change, Preston just mentioned it right there, the Big 12 winner is getting in between Arizona State and Iowa State, who sits at 16 right now. So those two teams would get that 12 seed, whoever the winner is of that game. Looking at the ACC, though, obviously you have SMU there at number 8, which is confusing because it's their first year in this conference. But with Miami and South Carolina just knocking on the door right there, they're at that 12-14 spot. But Miami doesn't play today. It's going to be South Carolina and Clemson. A South Carolina win, running the numbers here, I don't know if that gets them in. Jude, I know this is a lot of math and it's a lot of predictive analysis, so it's okay if you aren't sure, but looking at this, I don't see a route in which the 12 teams that are currently in it change.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. The 12 teams that are in it right now, I guess maybe no, never mind. But yeah, I don't think so. I agree. I don't like Alabama in there, but
Yeah,
it's
I
just
think
it's really hard to say because these guys, yeah.
yeah, I think we're all in agreement about the Alabama pick at 11 because that's 3-loss team getting over a Miami team that does not have those 3 losses. But Preston, help me out here. I'm looking at this bottom line. I'm looking at this 11 through 17 mark with some of these teams that are, quote unquote on the bubble. Are they really on the bubble? I just don't see a route in which, because Miami's not playing today, if they were playing today, it would be different. Because of their loss to Syracuse, they're not playing in the ACC championship. Do you see some type of switch here?
Okay, so this is kind of where the movement can happen within the playoff, but not much. SMU could lose to Clemson today, and that would move Clemson in, which would then would move Boise State up to the 3 there, the third bye, and then would most likely be Clemson at I want to say where Arizona State's at, and Arizona State would get a bye if they beat Iowa State. That's a lot of shifting that could happen. Penn State plays Oregon there. That could be some shifting. And if Texas beats Georgia, I don't know. I think that realistically they all stay in, but I think that would bump Bama out hypothetically and sneak another team in because the committee likes Georgia, but they've had some really close games. Tennessee and Ohio State are safe. Nothing's happened. So realistically, I don't see a way in which anyone 12 through 17 can get in aside from Clemson if they win their bowl game or Iowa State if they win their bowl game.
Yeah, I think you're right. Looking at that Clemson situation, because that's the only situation in which some things would change. And it's funny because I just went and looked up Clemson playoff scenarios explained. And you know how sometimes with like clinching scenarios in the NFL they have like 50 different options. I love this. They say Clemson playoff scenarios. Number 1, Clemson wins the ACC championship game. Or number 2, Clemson loses the ACC championship game. Those are the 2 scenarios. One means they get in. One means they get out. And like you said, the Tigers would potentially take that spot in the buys for the CFP teams that win their conference. That would be insane. Seeing Clemson come from basically out of nowhere and go and earn a first round bye. And if that is what ends up happening, they need to write a really, really nice letter to Syracuse after they knocked off Miami. What a fall from Miami. Preston, can you break down this a little bit? Miami, one of the top teams in the country all year, and then just slowly fell out after 2 big losses, and they're just gone now, basically.
Yeah, that was a really unfortunate downfall. I mean, listen, Georgia Tech's good. They were ranked at the beginning of the year, and they had some unfortunate losses, but they've got some good players on that team. And I mean, they played close with Georgia, went into that 7 overtime game. So that loss, I wouldn't see it hurting Miami as much. And Syracuse, I mean, they're 9-3. Kyle McCord's carried them. So I do think Miami's getting shafted a little bit. I mean, I don't understand why they are behind Alabama in this I mean, Alabama has 3 losses if I'm not mistaken. They're 9-3, so I don't know what's going on there.
Well, too deep into it, I think that there might be some bias for some good reason, but maybe too much bias towards some of these bigger conference schools between the Big Ten and the SEC, which is obvious in some facets. But think about what happened last year, Preston. Florida State, an undefeated team, didn't get into the CFP, and it's just maybe because this college football playoff selection committee doesn't have the same amount of respect for the ACC that they do some of the other conferences. It's been a wonderful day talking through. Yeah, Preston, if you want to give a comment on that, because I feel like that's the issue right now.
Well, no, I agree. I just think that college football playoff committee, they just favor the bigger schedules. Now, obviously, Alabama has a lot of ranked wins, so I could see that. But they lost to unranked Vanderbilt, unranked Oklahoma, and I just don't think that a team that loses to 2 unranked teams should get in when Miami plays a Georgia Tech team who's been solid, close, and a now ranked Syracuse team.
Well, either way, I believe that this college football playoff is going to be extremely entertaining. I believe it starts December 20th with a Friday night matchup, and then all day on Saturday, the 21st, it will be a fun day for that, and just to see how this plays out. Really excited to see some home playoff games and to see what college football looks like in a 12-team playoff format. It's been a wonderful day talking with both you, Jude, and Preston. It's been an exciting day talking about the Heisman and also the college football playoff. The Heisman pick, we will discuss what that ends up happening, but right now it should be Travis Hunter. I'm just saying, don't forget about Ashton Genty. He's got to be at least in the conversation to make it interesting. But Jude, could you please send us out with your quote of the day?
All right. So today, the quote of the day is, "Keep your face to the sunshine and you cannot see a shadow," by Helen Keller.